Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you this morning. The theme of this reflection is that religion may be deeper and more important than any ancient or anthropomorphic God. By this I mean that religion does not need or require that God be understood in the image of humankind, or indeed by human projection, how old or venerated those images may be. In that sense, it seems most suitable during this holiday season that we should focus on love or charity, whichever concept you may prefer. Consider the words of this familiar Christmas carol. Love came down at Christmas. Love all lovely, love divine. Love was born at Christmas. That is a terrific example of symbolism. By no means is it a portrayal of reality, but the symbols are important. Prophets and great sources of inspiration in human history, such as Jesus of Nazareth, or Moses, or Muhammad, or Gautama Buddha, each in their own way have sought to enlighten humankind on the fundamental questions of why we are here, or about the meaning and purpose of life. But there may well be more to religion than these figures in history have separately thought, spoken, or written. We can conduct our own search for the essence of what they sought to describe. Religion, in this sense, as we might describe it today, holds the view that certain fundamentally important and great objective values permeate the world around us. Let me repeat that. Great objective values permeate the world around us. So, ours is not a world of moral relativism. Some things really do matter. Some ideas are evil. Some movements are evil. Some people are evil. But how do we discover what these evil things may be? The American-British philosopher Ronald Dworkin, now deceased, wrote recently a little book called Religion Without God, and he said that the entire universe and all of its creatures, including us, are awe-inspiring. Awe-inspiring. That human life has a purpose, and that the universe has an order yet to be fully discovered. He suggests that we should not stop trying to understand. Now, Dworkin's ideas do not necessarily demand or require any form of supernaturalism. However, Dworkin may be pantheistic, as was Baruch Spinoza. If you've heard of Spinoza, a Jewish-Dutch philosopher in Amsterdam in the 18th century, or the great Christian humanist Erasmus of Rotterdam, may well have been in the 17th century, when it was even more dangerous than in Spinoza's time to dissent from officially prescribed church doctrine. They were both dissenters, but they were careful dissenters. They both sought, each in their own way, the good, the true, and the beautiful. They thought that goodness permeated the world in which they were part. Each in their own times, they had that thought goodness could be discovered through the use of observation and reason. That's why it was called the Enlightenment. A central aspect of the appeal of traditional religion has been that they have all attempted to fill the void that surrounds us. The void, they try to fill that void with meaning, value, and purpose. Religions separately share their own convictions that God, as they have each understood what that concept means, underwrites all value positions. The traditional understanding, let me repeat that, is that God underwrites all value positions. In their view, God is the guarantor of values. Yet, it is possible that values have an independent reality, apart from any traditional understanding of a personal or a conventional God. In this sense, goodness is bigger than God, at least as God has traditionally been understood. Many people who say that while they do not believe in a personal God, also say that they do believe in aspects of the world that may represent a force greater than we ourselves represent. Something transcendent, in other words. As individuals or collections of individuals, we may recognize the transcendent. But what does it mean when people say that they believe in God, but their behavior often seems to be unaffected by their professed convictions? In some cases, it seems reasonable to say that they don't really believe in the God, at least the God they profess, at least in the God who expresses compassionate concern. But as Dworkin writes, many people sometimes may feel, this is really interesting, he says, many people may feel an inescapable responsibility to live their lives well. With due respect for the rights of others, they take pride in a life that they think well lived, and sometimes suffer inconsolable regret at a life they think, in retrospect, to have been wasted. My own very simple way of expressing this idea is that such people that I'm speaking of open doors to others rather than closing doors. It is important to be a door opener. Such people are my personal heroes. Such people are lovers of inclusiveness, and they try very hard not to be exclusive. They are good lovers, and they usually make very bad haters. But unfortunately, not always. Affirmations of goodness are not easy, and efforts at inclusiveness do not always make those who try to be inclusive happy, because there are indeed evil ideas in the world. Still, the search for the good means that those who try to find meaning cannot help being reflective about the fundamental issues and values around them, or about the evil that they sometimes see in our world. The search for goodness is not always pleasant. Yet, Dworkin writes of such searchers, they express a conviction that the force and wonder that they sense about them are real, just as real as planets or pain, that moral truth and natural wonder do not simply evoke awe, but call for it. It was in this sense that Albert Einstein, although a professed atheist, said that he was a deeply religious man. Dworkin notes that William James, who produced varieties of religious experience in 1902, once wrote that the essential element of religion is that there are things in the universe that throw the last stone. Thus, an atheist or an agnostic may believe in the importance of living well, in being able to throw the last stone. Einstein himself believed that some transcendental and objective value permeates the universe. That is one important reason why he sought to understand better what made the universe tick. Though he failed to discover a theory of everything during his lifetime, he persistently sought such a theory even to the end of his own days. Here is the metaphysical core that Ronald Dworkin suggests that we consider. The core belief is that human life has objective meaning and importance. Each of us has the responsibility to make his or her life a successful one. This means accepting ethical responsibility for oneself as well as moral responsibilities for others. Second proposition, the universe is sublime. It has something of great intrinsic value and wonder in it. We are part of nature because we are physical beings, although with a short duration. However, we are also apart from nature because of our consciousness of the world around us and because we make decisions that determine the life that we make for ourselves. We have a duty to make things better than they otherwise might be. Here are some simple value statements derived from Dworkin's book. Very simple. Cruelty and callous indifference are both wrong. Charity is good. The Latin word for charity is caritas, which means dearness or affection, or perhaps most simply, it means love. Are such statements objectively valid, even apart from God? How may we justify them? Why might such justification make a difference? And how do we engage in a search for moral obligation? Are the 7 UU principles, statements, objective? Consider the first 4. We affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the value of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, the acceptance of one another, and the encouragement of spiritual growth in our congregations. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Those are our principles. Dworkin submits that such principles and our affirmation of them may be objectively true. Now, I must tell you that I'm not sure he's right, but his is an interesting and important position. So let us examine briefly this process of finding objective values. Charity represents a loving concern for others. In the Christian tradition, Paul's letter to the Corinthians says that if we have not charity, we are nothing. In the Judaic tradition, the Talmud describes levels of charity known as tzedakah, the highest attainment of which is allowing the recipient of charity to become self-reliant or self-supporting. But the next highest achievement is giving when neither the donor nor the recipient know the other's identity. In the Islamic tradition, the third pillar of Islam is the duty of charity known as zakat, which means the compulsory or binding duty of charity. It is an obligation of those who receive the blessings of wealth to respond to those who are in need. In the Buddhist tradition, one performs real charity if you can give freely without any expectation of anything in return. In the Hindu tradition, the third of 10 observances is giving charity or dana, which means giving generously without any thought of reward. Or consider the following statement from 1933, John Dewey's first Humanist Manifesto. Dewey said, "We assert that humanism will endeavor to establish the conditions of a satisfactory life for all, not merely for a few." Isn't it intriguing? Isn't it wonderful how much these traditions from around the world and around history have in common? It's quite amazing when you think about it. In my view, another good way of understanding charity is by considering how large we draw the circle around us. To whom do we owe, to whom do we bestow our love and our compassion? How many people do we put within our personal circles of compassion? Who may be the loving objects of our concern? Do we exclude some people because of their race, their ethnicity, their gender, their sexual orientation, their religion, their politics, their wealth, or their poverty? Do we thus allow forms of what I call tribalism to separate us from others? What amounts to tribalism is all around us these days. The tribes of our time may be Democrats or Republicans, rich or poor, Christian or non-believers, Muslims or infidels. I will give you two short examples of what causes me concern. Both of these are recent. The recent attack by the Al-Shabaab on the Westgate Mall in Nairobi in Kenya in last September. The attackers at the mall first learned the religion of the persons they had captured. They then let the Muslims go and then executed the others whom they regarded as infidels. Okay? Now, if you think that is a far place away on another continent, according to Sean O'Callaghan, a former paramilitary leader with the Irish Republican Army, he was writing about the Kingsmill massacre that occurred in Northern Ireland in 1976. Catholic gunmen stopped a van filled with 12 workmen in County Armagh in Northern Ireland, freed the Catholics in the van, and then lined up the 11 Protestants who remained and shot them one by one. Or consider the evil that may never die, a statement by Yusuf al-Qadari, our contemporary who lives now currently in South Yemen, in a sermon broadcast in 2009, said, and I quote, these are not my words, please, "Throughout history, Allah has imposed upon the Jews people who would punish them for their corruption. The last punishment was carried out by Hitler. By means of all the things he did to them, even though the Jews exaggerated this issue, he managed them to put the Jews in their place." And Yusuf said, this was divine punishment for them. Okay, how many examples do we need? Can we do better? Of course, we must do better. Thomas Jefferson once wrote that all men are created equal, writing in the sexist language of his time. However, we know that he excluded slaves, such as Sally Hemings, you've
refer to Sally Hemings, whom he made his mistress through her slavery. We know that he viewed Negroes as being inferior to whites. Moreover, we know that he had little to say about the rights of women. This process of exclusion by race, gender, or by sexual orientation may be called dehumanization. We dehumanize those whom we choose to treat harshly, those that we exclude from our circles of compassion. The rights of men was the touchstone of the Enlightenment, but the rights of men as then conceived conflicted with the brutal and long-lasting colonialism that was imposed by European Caucasian men on sub-Saharan Africans or on the native people of North and South America. Colonialism is part of our history. We were formed as a process of colonialism. We can do better. We have done better, but there is still much to do. Instead, with Paul of Tarsus, a Jewish man and Roman citizen who wrote to the Christians at the Greek city of Corinth a long time ago, we may affirm, please excuse my slight editing, we may affirm that love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. Love is not arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. Love is not irritable or resentful. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. The spirit of love is the spirit of liberty. It is the spirit that seeks to understand the minds of other women and men. The spirit of liberty is the spirit that lays interests alongside its own without bias. The spirit of liberty remembers that not even a sparrow may fall to the earth unheeded. Now, those were not the views of a religious prophet. Those were the views by one of America's greatest judges. I will tell you about him briefly. He had the wonderful name Learned Hand. If you were going to be a judge, wouldn't you like to be called Judge Learned Hand? So may it be. So may we encompass everyone in our circle of compassion. And will you join with me as we rise in body or spirit, and as you are able and willing, and join